Hello everyone and welcome to the fourth lesson of the first chapter of the third book of the Art Journey series. This video took way longer than I initially thought and it's probably my fault. I will tell you why in a bit, but in this lesson I will tackle two subjects. One is the artist block, what to do when you find yourself uninspired and unmotivated to draw anything or come up with any new ideas. And the second subject is what to do to unblock it and in what way. And as always, the first part of the video going to be the lecture part and the second part is the drawing part. So in the previous lesson we saw how to study elements in the reference and how to pick what elements you want to study from them. We also saw how to study a subject with a purpose and how much you need to draw that subject. In this lesson we are going to see why it's important to draw from reference and is it just copying or it's more than that, and how is that related to the art block. As I mentioned before, the third book idea in general is how to study for a specific purpose. Not just studying reference for the sake of drawing or copying it, but to collect enough data from that reference to draw your own design. In chapter 1 I'm still hinting at the end goal, but I'm still not going in full details just yet. What you are going to see in this video is basically an index to what's going to come later. Each part will have its own video to explain. But for now I'm going to go quickly over things you can do to get over your art block and 200 different subjects you can choose from to not only unblock yourself from that situation, but also to create your own ideas out of it. With those 200 subjects, I will also tell you about other options within those subjects. So in total it will be like 1000 different subjects that you can draw from and inspire your own designs, and hopefully to unblock your art block. But before we dive in, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell and leave a comment down below. So what is an art block? According to Anastasia Zora from Medium, an art block is a period of time when an artist cannot access their creativity and or they cannot bring themselves to create new piece of work. They feel like they have run out of things to draw. So you sit in front of your tablet or paper for hours and you can't think of anything to draw. Or you can't draw what you are thinking of. It feels like the connection between your mind and your hand has been cut off, and you sit there for hours not able to draw anything. Now what are the main reasons for the art block to happen? There are many reasons why you would hit an art block. I have experienced most of them. These reasons are: 1. It could be mental or physical exhaustion period you are in, or even depression. Art can be produced during depression period or a blue period, but it would mainly be expressive rather than a technical drawing or illustration like concept art. It can be anxiety or upcoming deadline that you are worried about. You can also be on a high from a recent successful work that would stop you at your track because you can't seem to surpass it or do better than it. On the other hand, you could have just tried to do a painting and it failed miserably and you are still suffering from that experience. You might have way too many ideas to choose from. Or you can also have no ideas to choose from. Too many distractions, social media, video games, TV shows and so on. You may be stuck in a comfort zone and the idea you want to do is a bit further away from that and you are too afraid to try it. Or maybe you're not afraid to try it but you don't have enough experience to try new ideas just yet. Finally, you may be looking at other artists' work for too long and you are just getting overwhelmed with so many ideas and so many talented work that you are either overwhelmed or intimidated to do any work or to paint any new ideas. All these reasons and more could stop any artist in their tracks and you would end up with a huge art block. Okay, so what is the solution here? For me, the only way I found out so far to help with this is to completely ignore any idea that you are stuck at and to just draw from reference. It doesn't have to be related to your idea. Just pick up 10 different references, draw them first as they are, and then start mashing them together. You will be surprised how much this method works. By doing this, your mind will be functioning again in gathering new data and seeing shapes and colors that wasn't there before. It will start the engines in your brain to produce new ideas that one way or another lead back into your original idea or design that you wanted to draw. As I mentioned before, mashing references ideas together is yet to come. I showed some of it in the last video and I will show another patch of these ideas in this one. So let's go over some of these ideas. I made these in 15 to 20 minutes each, just as a quick sketch in most cases. We will go in much deeper in later videos. In this sketch we have 5 different images of a mountain, all 3 roots, some rock sculptures, and a scorpion. We can mash all of them into one monument-like object that can exist in some sort of a fantasy world. A scorpion sculpture inside a mountain with giant tree roots all around. I'm not changing too much of the reference photos here, mainly adding these references together into one object. We can do the same thing for characters. We pick up 4 different reference photos for a male figure, 2 concept art drawing of a warrior, and a mask. Now I don't recommend doing this if you are working on a paid job. You need to do way more editing than this. But I'm just showing how much you can get just by simply adding references together. The character I got is almost completely new character. If I wanted to, I could have changed the items a bit more and it will be a completely different and original character. But even without much editing, just gathering items, I came with the whole new entity. Doing this could bring you out from an art block and open the floodgate of information to put into your original ideas. In this example we see a 3D model of a collection of items on a table. Now I can draw it as it is the first time, then change the camera position in my mind and draw the same arrangement in a different perspective and different composition. This is one of my favorite exercises that I do sometimes when I can't think of anything else to do. It's just a fun way to solve puzzles in an art painting. So not only you are moving objects around the table, but you are doing it in a whole different view. So you have to understand the dimension of each object in 3D and transfer it into a 2D drawing all in your mind. Not only that, but you can also change the lighting in the original image to a whole different angle. So you end up with changing perspective, composition, and lighting all in the same time. If this doesn't jog your brain into full gear, I don't know what would. Another fun exercise that I can't wait to do a whole video on is mashing 2 completely different objects into one. Here we have a tank from a present era and a sci-fi building. So I took the characteristic and the design of the building and infused it into the tank as a base idea. I can't tell you how fun this is. Not only you are starting to change the design of the tank, but also adding things like the radar on top of the building into the tank. So in this example we are changing the theme and the era of the tank from modern days to sci-fi realm, using an architecture building that you would never think of doing in normal situation. We can also gather things around into a pile of design. Like here we have so many reference photos of a collection of items. Things like a guitar, skulls, tents, teddy bear, and many more. Compiling it all into one abandoned camping tent telling a certain story. It doesn't have to be a tent, it could be an apartment, or a library, or a magic workshop, or anything you can think of. Here we are taking the items as they are and we are just moving, rotating, and scaling them as it fits our new composition and light. It builds on all the previous examples to do your own ideas. Another design exercise is this crazy one. You take one original idea, either an object in real life or a part of a concept design, then you take it apart into its original parts. Like here we have this AI turret with 4 different parts: the main turret, the guns, the base, and the wheels. Now we start randomizing its part by scaling, rotating, and moving each part around. So we can make the wheels bigger, or build 3 levels of the turret body, or maybe make the guns bigger, or the wheels even smaller. All these different and weird ideas that you can explore. Now instead of cutting and pasting these parts, it's better to draw this variation yourself and explore all the way with these parts. I did the same thing here with this portal character, changing the scale of each part and exploring different ideas for each. Each one of those could be another character in the story, or with a bit more modification it can be a totally new original character. You can also change the subject itself but keep the shape of the original one. Like in this example where I took a normal looking sink mixer and turned it into a sci-fi vehicle. Now with more few hours on this, it can be turned into a whole different machine or a spaceship. If you want to see more about that, you can Google Space Goods and get ready to be amazed. He turned so many normal everyday objects into spaceships and they look amazing. Yet another way you can modify your reference is to take one animal, turn it into a thumbnail, and start doing variation on that animal. Like taking a lion for example and changing it into different creatures with different proportions. It's the same thing as taking an object apart and scaling its parts, but here with an organic shape instead. And what you end up with could be your next original design. And here is another example, starting with a donkey and turning it into all these different animals. Finally, we can take an original idea, for example a car, and change other attributes like we did before. Here we can change its materials from plastic and metal to wood and rubber. Or maybe instead we can change the actual design of the car to fit the new material, like making it from bones and skin as an apocalyptic Mad Max world vehicle, or maybe a Jeremy Clarkson vehicle. We can also change the state of the object from a new pristine car into a wrecked vehicle damaged all around. For this you can use other reference images for car crashes and apply them to your example. Finally, we can change the timeline of an object, like a car abandoned in a forest and nature taking it back. Trees and grass will be all over it, and the car itself will start sinking into the ground as the grass gets taller around it. In all these examples I mentioned, you are not only copying your reference, but you are modifying and changing them to a place where they become your own original creation. Basically what concept art is all about. I know I have been teasing these techniques for a while now, but I promise you, it's all going to be in chapter 2. We just need to cover the basics first before diving in deep in each and every way you can change and manipulate real-world objects into your own design. So this is the first part of the equation. We knew what is an art block, why you would face an art block, and how to study from reference to resolve that issue. So now let's talk about what can you draw. What subject can you pick to start drawing from? When I started this, I began with 50 examples. Then it became 100, then 150, and finally 200. If I didn't stop myself honestly, I would have probably gone over 1000. There are just endless examples and subjects to draw from. And I really hope that you never ask yourself, what should I draw ever again, after you watch this video. Well, at least I hope so. The world is so vast and there are just endless things you can draw, and we will cover at least 200 of them. Now I think I messed this up by actually drawing each one of these subjects live and recording it. I decided to do it when it was just 50, but when it went to 200, I thought this is gonna take forever to finish, so I had to finish each drawing in 10 to 15 minutes max, or that's gonna take forever to finish. But even that, it took around 64 hours. 64 hours just for this part, and maybe another 10 hours for the rest. Putting almost 3 months in one video is just not logical, to be honest. And if I keep doing this, I won't end any of my books anytime soon. So lesson learned. Being a perfectionist is really bad habit. And I even added it to my top 50 bad habits video, which is another series that I didn't finish just yet. Oh well. I know we had a poll before on leaving drawing on real time instead of being sped up, but trust me on this one, I had to speed it up 100 times per drawing, otherwise it could be a 65 hours video, and probably the longest video that ever existed. Don't worry, the important part here is to see the subject itself that I'm talking about, not the drawing part of it. So let's start counting these subjects. I divided these subjects into 9 categories: landscape, anatomy, animals, architecture, character props, objects, themed, characters. Finally, the last one, which is not subject per se, but more of options, mediums, and styles. I'm gonna go into each one of these categories and subcategories, and go into even the smaller section of each subcategory. So with that all said, let's dive in and look at the 200 different subjects to resolve your art block, starting with the landscape category. Underneath the landscape category, we have the rock formation subcategory. And underneath that, we can have the small rock formation like granite or silica rocks that will have unique hard surfaces with great light and shadow variety. See, this took around 25 minutes, and you are seeing it in 10 seconds, which makes me question why would I draw it instead of just adding a picture in its place. I honestly think I really wanted to draw all of them for some reason. They are really fun to do. Okay, next we have crystals. Those can be salt crystals, gems, diamonds, quartz, or any other variety of them. Their unique shape can be enlarged to become mountain-sized crystals and weird alien planets. Very intriguing. We can also draw rock arches. These formations are used a lot in concept art, especially in showing a hero's journey from one place to another. One arch can lead to a whole new painting by itself. Next we have caves. These can be different in sizes, small opening or big large ones. A cave entrance can be modified as a camping site for your hero, or maybe an evil lair for a nasty gang. Water feature. You can draw waterfalls, rivers, lakes, seas, oceans, or any other water feature you like. The variety is endless, and so is the opportunity to make it your own. Mountains and hills. It can be icy mountains, rocky mountains, green hills, or any variety of a large rock formation. You won't find a single concept art piece without one of those. Finally, under the rock formation, we have monuments and statues, which also may include ruins and ancient archaeological sites. These can be your new enchanted forest, or a mysterious golden city, if you want them to be, of course. The possibilities are limitless. In the next category, under the landscape, we have trees and plants. Under that label, we can draw all tree roots. These organic formations can show old cities, or can be transferred into alien life, or industrial pipeline with hard surfaces. These are very interesting to draw as well. They help a lot with perspective lines. We have also fruits, seeds, and flowers. You can draw them by themselves as an cutout for a still life, for example, or draw them on trees to add to your environment and landscape. Then we have plants, shrubs, and bushes. All can be used to either lighten up an interior scene or a small garden around the architecture site. These plants can be complicated, and you won't go into much details in larger paintings, but it's always good to know it up close before turning it into an abstract stroke for your larger paintings. Fungi, spores, and algae. These unique formations can be easily transformed into alien flora with simple tweaks here and there. Their exotic shapes are really interesting to draw and observe. Mushrooms are part of the fungi kingdom, but I put it in its own category due to its even more bizarre shapes and formation. These can be enlarged to become homes for certain species, or added to a place to add a magical touch around it. Of course, we have trees, one of the most unique formation in the list. This section of a subcategory of the larger category can be divided into endless smaller sections to draw from. I mean, there are over 60,000 different species of trees in the world that we know of. So pick 1,000 of them and turn them into something special. Finally, under trees and plants, we have these unique alien trees. Now these are either plants, trees, or fungi, but they look so weird you can add them to alien landscape as they are. This is how weird they look. Earth has enough variety that you may draw a plant or a tree that very few people saw, and you can get away with it by making it your own, by simply changing colors, sizes, or add some fluorescent light all over it. There isn't an easier way to steal design than stealing it from nature itself. Alright, now to the final subcategory under landscape, we have full landscape reference. These are not only good to study by their own, but also to pick up items from, like mountains and trees and any of the other sections we covered so far. With small tweaks here and there, they can become your own paintings. Starting with a natural landscape, these will have natural occurring objects in them, like mountains, lakes, trees, and maybe a little man-made object here and there that isn't overwhelming to the other parts of the painting. Which leads us to the mixed landscape. In this we have kind of a 50-50 man-made versus natural objects in one place, like this farm on the hills. Next we have urban landscape. These are very complicated, almost 90 to 100% man-made, mostly in cities, town and urban streets. These have so many things included in them. It will be perfect to study and learn from how to construct your own city that looks normal and works in the real world. We have of course the master artist landscape. These already have solved artistic problems by the old art masters. These are important to learn from to know how the old masters dealt with light, composition, atmosphere and colors in their own ways. You can copy it and then apply it to your own creation using their style and unique solutions. Finally, in the landscape category, we have concept art landscapes. These are modern day artists using digital medium to solve the same problem as the master artists. Learning the way foreground, background and midground works is very important in telling a story, and modern day artists are the masters of telling a story through a landscape painting. And this is it for the landscape category. Of course I can make 200 just out of this alone, but this should get you started and you can make your own subcategories from it as you like. So let's move on to the next category with anatomy. Underneath it we have the skulls. This includes the animal skulls, that can be turned into accessories or enlarged to become cave entrances and weird monuments. We can also draw human and humanoid skulls and modify them around just to learn from them, so we can draw an anatomically correct portrait or use them for weird character design like zombies or skeleton warriors. Alien skulls. These can be used to inspire your own creation by mixing it with any of the previous categories to make your own unique aliens. And we can use the same thing with creatures' skull like a dragon or a dinosaur to help with your own designs. We can also move on to the whole skeleton, not just the skull. And for the rest of the categories, we will use the same subsections for animals, humans, aliens, and creatures. Skeleton drawing can help with making zombies or creating injuries where the bones are showing. The same can be used for the muscle structure for all the previous ones. Drawing muscles can help with drawing and sculpting correct creatures of your own. Knowing how the body works is fundamental in making believable and correct designs. It also helps with the zombies-like character and creatures, and of course the injuries in any of them. We don't have to draw the whole animal or creature, we can just draw a part of it, like legs, arms, hands, feet, wings, or any part or a section of the body. This will help more in studying anatomy and make some matching different character and creatures together to create your own unique kind of creature. For example, griffins, which are created from different parts of animals mashed together. Finally, in the anatomy, we can draw full head or body subjects, which include gesture drawing. These can be for human gestures to quickly decide a pose you want, and also can be used for animals and creatures to pose them before you start committing to the details. We can also complete these gestures into full figure drawing, again for all creation. And finally, we can just stick to the portrait part of the human or even animals and creatures as well, and go full details on that small part. And this is it for anatomy. Let's move on to the animal kingdom. The animal kingdom includes way more than these, but let's narrow it down to a part of it. Starting with insects. Drawing insects is really important. It's the first step into creating alien creatures, just like how the fungi help with the alien flora. We have different kingdoms under the insects panel. First, we have the known ones like ants, bees, beetles, butterflies, mosquitoes, and so on. Also, drawing insects is great to learn perspective, since they are simple but yet geometrically symmetrical in most cases. Another type is the Chelicera, which includes the arachnids like scorpions, spiders, crabs, and others. Great reference to use for mechs and alien creatures. Then we have the crustaceans like crabs, lobsters, shrimps, starfish, and others. Enlarge one of those and you got a boss fight on your hand. Finally, you have the centipedes, and those are the fuel of nightmares all around the universe for everyone who ever lived anywhere in any time. And they make good creatures. With that, we are done with insects. Let's explore the mammals. The options for these are limitless. You can have 50 if not more underneath the mammals. For example, we have the furless mammals like elephants, hippos, moles, hairless cats, and dogs. These are easy to draw. Great to use as a base for a huge creature that you can build up on, and also great practice for perspective as well. We also have small pets like cats, dogs, foxes, rabbits, and many more. People keep all kinds of weird pets these days, and these can be considered little companions in your hero's journey or adventure. Big prey animals can be used as wildlife in your designs. Animals like gazelles, buffaloes, deer, elks, and so on can be modified into transportation animals and friendly characters. On the other hand, we have the big predators like lions, tigers, hyenas, leopards that can be used as war machines or war animals in a fantasy-themed painting. Next subcategories we have fish and birds, the sky and the sea animals. Again, this is twice as big as the mammal category. It includes small fish like golden fish, koi, sardines, angelfish, and many more. Also, we have the big fish, the predators of the sea, like the great white shark, the killer whales, even the non-aggressive ones like the blue whale or dolphins. All these can be used both as reference for alien animals or a base to an alien vehicle. Then we have the birds, small birds like robins, magpies, crows, pigeons, and so on. These can be used as a reference for other animals or turn into a humanoid character with bird-like features. Big birds like eagles, ostriches, emus, or spouts can be reshaped, reused, and redesigned as you wish. We move on to the reptiles. All these animals would make great bosses in video games. Lizards in all shapes and forms. Then we have snakes that can be modified into your designs, and of course, the most horrifying creature of them all. Others like turtles, geckos, frogs, alligators, iguanas, and many, many more. Finally, the prehistoric reptiles, all kinds of dinosaurs that you can imagine and look up. Every species of them can be used to fuel your imagination. In the final subcategory, we have the mythical animals and creatures from ancient lore, novels, myths, and fairy tales. Good mythical creatures like angels, Pegasus, unicorns, griffins, and some type of dragons. And the bad mythical creatures like demons, minotaurs, centaurs, succubuses, medusas, and some types of dragons as well. And this concludes the animal category. Let's move on to the architecture. Architecture have many different subcategories and many sections that will aid you in drawing different types of landscape, urban cities, interiors, and cutaways that are very much needed in concept art. The first subcategory we have is different material. Every building in every time period have a different type of building materials. For example, we have the Western type of building using wood. We have the European medieval type using stone for their buildings. We have the present day era using concrete. Also in the modern era or the futuristic period, we use metal like aluminum and steel to shape unique building designs. Finally, we have glass or a mix of glass and concrete for a sci-fi look building or a modern day, depending on what you are looking for. So now that we divided buildings based on materials, let's divide them based on the culture behind them. These can use all type of materials I mentioned before, but in different location and culture behind them. So for example, we have the Asian culture with their unique triangular shape building and unique leveling in between. We also have the Vikings with long slanted roofs and wood and stone structure. The African buildings with a unique ventilation system and white colors to cool the residents inside from the searing sun above. We have the Oriental or the Middle Eastern architecture with its unique decoration and arabesque type carvings. Finally, we have the Roman style architecture with its huge columns and marble structures with statues all around. Okay, so now we divided the buildings by the materials and the culture behind it. Let's divide it by the type of the building we can draw. We can draw barns, farmhouses, or any agricultural structure. We can draw huts, cabins, and small, simple, easy to erect structures. We can also draw residential buildings in modern city with many floors and designs. We can draw religious buildings like mosques, churches, synagogues, temples, and so on. Finally, we can draw abandoned buildings, like in a war zone, or just left over from a deserted city, like Chernobyl, or something like that. So what else can we divide the buildings by? How about going into details, like elevations, which can be used as thumbnailing for quickly coming out with ideas like for characters, but here for buildings. We can use sections as 2D cutaways to explain how the buildings work from inside out. We can draw elements like small decoration, plasters, or carvings. We can also do interior shot, which is basically an interior landscape which includes everything from objects to lighting to plants to a certain mood. Finally, we can do 3D cutaways. These are very important in the gaming industry, explaining how a vehicle or a house look like from inside out without the need to draw every single room by itself, kinda like an overall view of a level. In the final part, we divide the buildings by themes, which style we are going with. We can go with medieval architecture, basic, simple, made with stone, metal and wood. Or we can go with sci-fi, futuristics, lots of panels and very slick design. We can go with steampunk, lots of gears, lots of steam, and lots of punk as well. We can also go with cyberpunk, said no one ever, but I mean the style, not the you know what, which is very artistic, lots of neon lighting and shiny leather. Finally, we can go with utilitarian and industrial design, with lots of chimneys and lots of smoke. And this includes the architecture category. Now we can go into the character props. These are props worn by the character or the creature. It's part of the character design but not the whole thing. It adds a lot to a character and give it more richness and a backstory. We divide this category into fashion, armor, weapons, accessories, and props. In the fashion subcategory we have different clothing styles, like we did with the architecture. We have medieval clothing, present day clothing, sci-fi, steampunk, and cyberpunk. All different styles can be changed and manipulated to fit your own character design. Next we have the armor. This will follow the same section as before, but for the armor. Armor and fashion are different items. It's like clothing for peace and war. And as with fashion, the armor changed drastically with each theme. Medieval armor, present day armor, sci-fi, steampunk, and cyberpunk. We can also do weapons. For example, we have melee weapons like knives, daggers, swords, axes, and so on. Next we have the ranged weapon in all different timelines like guns, bow and arrows, rifles, shotguns, laser weapons, and many more. Magical weapons like mage staff, magic items, magical stones, you get the picture. Scientific weapons. These are not weapons per se, but more like research items, medical items, scanning items, things like that. Finally, we have the themed weapons. Like we did with the armor and fashion, we can also do it with the weapons in medieval style, present day style, sci-fi, steampunk, and cyberpunk. For the next subcategory, we have accessories. These are things that the character wear on a certain part of the body. Like for example, jewelry. Under that we can add rings, necklaces, bracelets, and talismans. Fabric props. These are props that are attached to your clothing or armor. Props like scarves, vests, packs, pouches, and harnesses. Head props. These are for the head part, not the face part. Things like helmets, hats, caps, bandanas, beanies, and everything that covers the head part. Shoes and gloves. These are very self-explanatory, anything you wear on your hands and feet. Finally, masks. Unlike the head props, these are things that cover your face, like masks, eye patches, breathing masks, and so on. The final subcategory we have actual props, starting with fabric accessories props like belts, bands, and straps. Then we have holsters for the guns, swords, arrows, and the rest of it. We have also materials. These are the materials used for the character. We can make material spheres from studying a subject, like here we have a sphere of fabric, but we can go on to any material used on the character. Cybernetics. These are robotics, mechanical or electronical attachments we use on the character. It can be in any place of the body, arms, legs, body, or head. The final part of the character props are utilities props, backpacks, bags, handbags, attachable boxes, and so on. And with that, we are done with the character props. Let's take a look at objects. These are inanimate objects in different subcategories. In the first one, we have hard surfaces. These include any object that you would find around either mechanical or electrical object. Starting with the mechanical object, these can be any type of machines, either working on motion alone or steam or electricity. Next we have electronical objects like radio, TV, computers, and so on. Tools, hand tools, painting tools, sculpture tools, all kinds and shapes of tools. Appliances, home appliances, work appliances, kitchen appliances. Finally, everyday objects like keys, pens, kids' toys, and any simple hard surface object you find on your daily basis. These can be great practice to draw and even more satisfying to turn into pretty designs. Next we have organics, which are basically non-hard surface objects. Those include soft bodies like stuffed toys, towels, pillows, and many others. Furniture that isn't necessarily a soft body but look like an organic shape. Mostly modern furniture that is 3D printed into organic forms. Everyday objects, same with the previous one, but those are soft body instead of hard surfaces, like cushions, pottery, curtains, and so on. Statues. Now these were covered in the first category, which was landscape, but these are more of an interior statues rather than exterior ones. Also, these are modern style statues that look like an organic shape. Next subcategory is still life. Still life by itself can be a whole category, but let's narrow it down to man-made still life. This will include objects that are man-made like cups and teapots, flowers, which will include still life with flower arrangements inside a vase or a pot. Fruits and vegetables. Still life that are consist of a basket of fruits and things like that. Jugs and jars. Still life with, well, jugs and jars. Finally, mixed still life, which have mainly all of the above in one place. Next we have vehicles, all kind and type of them, like bikes, bicycles, scooters, even unicycles. We also have cars, trucks, vans, minivans, lorries. I would even include trains in this. Industrial, like bulldozers, loaders, forklifts, mixers, dump trucks, cranes, wrecking balls, and six-wheelers. Ships, including boats, jet skis, yachts, submarines, and sailboats. Finally, planes, private planes, gliders, helicopters, rockets, spaceships, and also any military version of all of the above. In the final subcategory we have themed vehicle. Like we did before with the armor and fashion. Cyberpunk vehicles, sci-fi vehicles. We can also do alien-style vehicles, medieval vehicles, and steampunk vehicles. And this concludes the objects category. Soldiering on to the next one, themes. Now we have done some theme drawing before, but this is where we gather all of them under one banner, all of the previous categories under one theme. So you can simply decide to do one sheet of drawing of everything medieval, or everything steampunk, or present day, or cyberpunk, or sci-fi, or alien. So let's start with the medieval. Now the subsection will be the same for all in each different theme. So we can draw objects in medieval style like musical instruments, weapons like swords and the rest of it, architecture in the medieval style, characters, and finally vehicles. We do the same for the steampunk theme as well: objects, weapons, architecture, characters, and vehicles. Next is the present day, and we can go from the 1900 all the way to 2020. We can pick and choose what style do we want for objects, weapons, architecture, characters, and vehicles. Next is cyberpunk. Now cyberpunk and sci-fi may be similar in some aspects, but cyberpunk is not that far future. It's more like 50 to 100 years in the future, while sci-fi is anywhere between 100 years to 1,000 to 10,000 years in the future. We do that for objects, weapons, architecture, character, and vehicles. Finally, the sci-fi subcategory, and we do the same for objects, weapons, architecture, characters, and vehicles. And with that, we wrap it up for themes and go next to the characters. This is where most of my time was spent, almost 30 to 40 minutes on each one of those, and that was doing it quick. But I wanted to show each in its own category, and I was already far in that I just couldn't add pictures. So let's start with the subcategories. For starter, we have the humanoid characters. These are mostly human characters in different jobs or status. For example, we can draw soldiers, infantry, police officers, or guards, and so on. Then we have the ranged warrior, like archers, snipers, stone throwers. We can also draw the mechanics, the utilitarian workforce, the scientist, the racing driver, and any non-military character. Next we have wizards, mages, witches, and sorcerers. Finally, we have priests, monks, bishops, and any religious character. Next subcategory we have creatures. Now those can be humanoid but not actually a human, at least not anymore. For example, we can draw elves, dwarves, gnomes, hobbits, and fairies. We can go to the bad side and draw orcs, goblins, trolls, lizard people. We move on to the animalistic creatures. These are based on animals more than humans, and this can be as big as ever. Any animal can be turned into a creature with the right tweaks. Next we have zombies. These can be any undead creatures, like ghosts, wraiths, skeletons, werewolves, and finally, vampires. Then we have the mythical creatures. These come from ancient folklores and stories. Demigods, giants, titans, religious creatures. We start with angels. Then to the opposite, of course, demons. It also includes all the demonic creatures like imps, hellhounds, succubus, and even the devil himself. Next we have the minotaurs, the centaurs, and finally dragons. But also you can include griffins, mermaids, fairies, and even a Bigfoot. Yes, those are real. Next one we have aliens, and those include cyborgs, which are half human, half machines, but can be considered under aliens as well. This is where you need cybernetics props to add to your character. We have techno-aliens. Those are mostly modern-era aliens you find in games like Warframe or Destiny. They are kind of a sci-fi alien mixed with medieval armor. Next we have the natural aliens. Those are aliens you find in the wild, mostly a mix between an animal and a plant that can be wild to draw and imagine. We also have humanoid aliens. Those aliens are a mix between human and animal characteristics, like the one we saw in Mass Effect, the Turians, the Asaris, the Salarians, and so on. Finally, we have the insects and creature aliens. Those are based on a mix between insects and animals to create a horrific and weird creatures from a different galaxy. The final category we have robots and mechs. And alien technology. Those will include robots, of course, which isn't really alien technology, but they will be alien to us when they take over the earth and turn us into batteries, the usual thing. We can draw humanoid mechs. Those are referred to as Gundam suits, which are a mobile military suit famous in the Japanese anime and manga. And of course we have the mechs, all kinds, all shapes, all types. We have animalistic robots. Those are a mix between an animal and a robot, just like the normal robots but with animals. And in the same line, we can mix insects with robots and get the spider-like mix, for example. And this is it for this category. Now we get to the final category, which isn't subjects you draw, but more like a style or a medium to try. This can be applied to everything you saw in the previous 8 categories, if you want to venture outside your comfort zone. Now since they aren't subjects to draw, I didn't actually draw them but added pictures for you to see what I'm talking about. Or maybe I'm just tired, to be honest, and made this as an excuse not to draw them. But come on, after 180 examples my arm's gonna fall off. I really need a break. So let's say it's better this way. So underneath this category we have different mediums. I included master art under the medium because I think copying their style can be applied to all type of mediums you want to use. For example, medium you will find a master artist who excelled in it. Those mediums include pencil drawing, inking, watercolors, and oil paintings. But of course, that's not all of them. You can also add acrylics, gouache colors, collages, and many more. Next we have different genres. These include different styles you can draw with. So far we were using the realistic style for all the previous subjects, but imagine doing all of them in one of those categories, like drawing a car in anime style, or inking in manga style. Maybe drawing different characters in a western comic style, or cartoons, or even in a Disney animated style. It will be like a double effect, practicing the subject itself and changing in style. You will really improve when you do something like that. And maybe I will do a video on that later on. Next we have different styles. Those are not like the one before, those are more of a rendering style. You will find those more in indie games and some of the AAA games. Those include cel shading, which is basically flat shadows without any gradation in between. We have low poly, which is mostly a painted over piece over a low poly count model, a 3D model. The most famous example is Clash of Clans, a mobile game, and many copies of it on other mobile games. We have pixel art, another famous style from the 80s and 90s games and much more famous recently in indie games. These look like zoomed in canvas with very few strokes. Well, not strokes but pixels in different colors, making out symbols of subjects. It would be really interesting to paint a still life in pixel art if you want to try it. Next we have flat art, famously used for the indie game Firewatch, a really cool game. These look like cel shading, except the shading part is in darker tones of the colors instead of other colors like the ones in the cel shading. We will talk about this in its own video in the future. Finally we have the vector art, which is art done using vectors and lasso selections and rendered in flat colors as well. This is it for styles, and the final categories is the subject matter itself. What I mean by this is that you can extract any of those subjects out of a reference photo you study. It's a video I'm planning to do after this one to show how many subject matter you can study from one image. For example, you can study the perspective in that image or painting. We can study the composition. We can study the values, the colors, the anatomy, the materials, and finally picking up a certain subject from the painting and studying it by itself. We will do a video about this and it will be really cool to do. And with that, here they are. 200 different subjects you can draw to get you out of your art block, along with 800 others I talked about along with them. If these couldn't get you out your art block, I don't know what can, to be honest. If you mashed any of these subjects together and created anything new out of it, you are already out of your art block. So instead of sitting down in front of your white canvas waiting for something to happen, don't wait for it to happen. It will never happen if you don't draw anything. But instead of drawing random stuff, draw for a purpose. Draw a design. Draw to change things, to manipulate objects, to mash them, to gather them in one place, to modify them, to create something that no one else can even think of except you. Then, and only then, you would break the block to pieces and go back to your great painting mood. This is it for the longest video I ever worked on, lesson 4 of the third book of the Art Journey series. I hope you find it useful and fun to watch. Even though it was long, I really did enjoy drawing all these subjects. I never got to do something like that in my daily job, so I have to admit there is something in it for me as well. So now let's go to the homework. As for your homework, pick 2 to 3 subjects from any of the previous categories and fill up a sheet first with different variation of these 3 subjects. For the easy mode, fill one sheet with 5 different variations for each of the 3 subjects. When you are done, try to mix and match some of those subjects together by either using some elements in one of them and mashing it into another, or use any of the techniques we talked about in the beginning of the video. You will end up with 15 different subjects, and you can mash them into 5 different mixtures. For the hard mode, draw each subject in its own sheet and do 10 variations for each. So you end up with 30 different subjects that you can then mash into 10 different mixtures. I have to remind you that the third book isn't for absolute beginners. So if you are doing this, you already know your perspective, your values, your composition, and your design basics. So try to have some fun with it. And keep the information I said here in this video in your mind for whenever you are facing your own art block in the future. I hope you don't, but eventually we all do. Well, this is it for lesson 4 of the third book of the Art Journey series. Remember, you can't wait on an art block to go away. It won't. You need to flood your brain with so much information and data that it can create and mash and mix all of those data together to fill up your energy again, and put this whole mixture of data and energy into the design that have stopped you in the first place. As always, keep your head down and go for the long haul. Good luck with your studies. Before I go, I'd like to thank my Patreons who donated to my channel. If you'd like to donate to my channel, please go to patreon.com/rainwalker. Thank you all for your generosity. I also like to send a shout out to the members of this channel who joined for almost 5 months now, so thank you all for your great contributions. If you'd like to join, you can hit the join button underneath this video. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you want to see more art tutorials for beginners or non-beginners, paintings and visual library series. Click the subscribe button underneath this video to stay tuned and click the notification bell to stay up to date with new videos. I'm still working on the second book video as well, but just like this video, the second book is even more complicated. I need to be very careful with the information I put in the second book, because these are the fundamentals of drawing. If you build your drawing on a faulty one, the bad habits will stick with you for a long time. So I'm taking my time with it and adding as much examples as is humanly possible. I don't know if I'm gonna make it for next week, especially with the electricity cuts I'm having recently, but I will try my best. But for now, if you want to see other videos in the third book series, you can click over here. Or if you want to check out other quick exercises for different topics, you can click on it over there. This is it for now. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.